Hello everyone, hope you're all having a wonderful day. And today guys, we're going to be going over my Frost Shot Rogue build for Season 1. Now I know most of my builds are Twisting Blades. It was definitely a breath of fresh air to actually try a different core skill, and Penetrating Shot is actually a lot better than I thought. Is it as good as Twisting Blades though? No. No, it definitely isn't. It is a lot of fun to use, and when you get the right synergy working with Penetrating Shot, it offers some of the best AoE potential the Rogue can have. With this build, we are running fantastic CC, just like most of my other Rogue builds. We are using a bucket ton of crowd control. Now, we are running a lot of movement speed, and this is really good because we can stay mobile and just keep out of the way of the enemy attacks. Because let's be honest, our evade isn't really an evade, it's just a small dash. We have really good survivability now that we are using a marksman core skill. We're able to keep a bit more distance instead of running in there with Twisting Blades and popping a few hits we didn't expect to get hit with. With marksman Rogue, we're able to keep that distance, and I feel like we just have a much better survivability. We also have really good survivability because we are running a lot of damage reduction on this build. I think most rogues are doing this now, but we are utilizing 7 skills. It is a lot easier to do with a marksman Rogue than it is a melee, but we are utilizing 7 skills. Now you're going to be able to fly through just about any bit of content with this build. I'm able to push tier 90 plus nightmare dungeons pretty consistently. This is what I was saying, I was quite shocked at how good Penetrating Shot actually is. I know it's the season of the Barber, and Barber makes everything a hell of a lot better, but I was still actually kind of surprised at how good this build is. And a small disclaimer, this is the first time I'm doing a marksman build, so I might miss a few things, and there's a few things that might be better than what I am using. I'm going to try and go over them as I go through the skills and the aspect, but if I do miss anything, please let me know, and also apologies in advance. Now moving on over to the skills guys, we are still running Puncture. I tried using another marksman's basic, and I just didn't really enjoy them. Puncture is just too quick, and it just fits my kind of playstyle a hell of a lot better. If you want to play really safe, Forceful Arrow is also another good option. Of course, for our core skill, we are now using Penetrating Shot. We are still using Smoke Grenade. I really enjoy using Smoke Grenade because we're able to get instantaneous crowd control out on the enemies. Now next up, we are still running Concealment. I personally just like Concealment a little bit better for controller because we're not able to aim easily at enemy targets, so Shadow Step kind of isn't really that great for controller. I feel like Concealment is just way more consistent for controller to get unstoppable or to get yourself out of CC. Like I said, we are using 7 skills, and because of a certain aspect, we are using Dark Shroud. We're able to get Dark Shroud out for free, which is in turn really good for our survivability. Last but not least, we are running 2 imbuement. So I am using Cold Imbuement, and I am also using Poison Imbuement for this build. Now as per usual, I will leave the max roll build planner in the description below so you guys can just go and check that out to save you having to watch a video explaining a million things that you probably already know. Now because the build planner is there, I'm not going to go over too much of the skills and aspects. I will still go through it with you guys, but just remember that that build planner is in the description below. You guys can just go and check that out, and all of this information will be there. Now I'll mainly do that just so it saves me a hell of a lot of time, so I don't have to explain all of this again to you guys. I'm sure most of you guys that are playing Rogue probably know how Rogue works. So we are taking Puncture. We want to upgrade it all the way to Fundamental Puncture. This is really good. This is just going to let our Puncture be able to make enemies vulnerable. We are maxing out Penetrating Shot, have another 3 points in here from my gloves. We want to upgrade all the way to Advanced Penetrating Shot. This is so whenever we cast Penetrating Shot at full resource, it's going to slow enemies by 50%, and elites will also be knocked down. This is really good to just instantly CC elites as soon as you walk into a room. This is also really good to just keep that CC up on those elites, because let's be honest, the elites are really the only thing that are going to kill you when you're trying to push high nightmare dungeons. And one tip with Penetrating Shot, always try and make sure that you get the enemies like in a line, because Penetrating Shot does still increase damage the more enemies appear. So yeah, that's one big tip with Penetrating Shot. Just make sure you get all the enemies in a line, and you will literally do a shit ton more damage. We are still maxing out Sturdy. I do have 2 points in Siphoning Strike. I really don't think they need to be here. I just don't know where to put the 2 other points. I could like max out Concussive and then max out Tri Attack, so when we critically strike daze enemies we get more knockdown duration. So I haven't really played around with that too much. These kind of are just pointless points, but I still have got them there just to have just a tiny little bit of survivability. And because we are using combo points, Penetrating Shot does have a very high lucky hit chance. So I feel like just because we are using Penetrating Shot, we probably can get Siphoning Strikes out more than any other core skill, but I still feel like these 2 points are kind of pointless. Coming on down to the agility section, we're not really taking any agility skills, but we are maxing our weapon mastery. Now, since we are using Penitent Greaves, we only have 1 evade charge. So every time we daze enemies, we're able to reduce our evade cooldown, which is really good because, like I said, we only got 1 friggin' evade, and that's not really ideal in some situations. We have 1 point into try attacks that whenever we critically strike a dazed enemy, they will be knocked down for 0.5 seconds. Now, we do have 2 points into concussive. Whenever we knock back or knock down an enemy, we're going to gain 8% critical strike chance against them. So we are taking concealment, and you want to upgrade that to countering stealth. Now, I like countering stealth just a little bit better because we are using the exploit glyph. So when we do use stealth and break stealth, I do like having that guaranteed critical strike, because that means as soon as we use penetrating shot after we break out of concealment, our barber is going to start ticking on those enemies. We are taking smoke grenade. We have upgraded that up to countering smoke grenade. Now, the best thing about smoke grenade is enemies affected by smoke grenade are going to take 20% increased damage. Crazy damage multiplier just to have from a skill. And counter smoke grenade isn't really needed, but it is just nice that when we deal direct damage to those enemies affected by smoke grenade, we have a lucky hit chance to refresh our cooldown. Like I said before, we are running 7 skills, and the 7th skill is Dark Shroud. We're able to get this out with our aspect, the Umbrous aspect. Now, we are upgrading this all the way to Subverting Dark Shroud. Now, this is going to give us increased movement speed per Dark Shroud we have, so we can bag 20% extra movement speed when we have 5 Dark Shrouds out, which is really nice. We're able to stay very mobile. We are maxing out Exploit. It's going to give us more damage to healthy and injured enemies, and we are also maxing out Malice, which is going to give us more damage to vulnerable enemies. Moving on over to the imbuement section, we are taking Poison, and we are upgrading this to Blended Poison Imbuement. I'm not sure what's better here. Feel free to put whatever. You could take Mixed Poison Immune, or you could take Blended. They both kind of do the same thing. It's just one works on a lucky hit and one works on a critical strike. So I have just gone with Blended in hopes that we do critically strike, it does more damage, and then therefore when Barber's ticking on the enemy, we will do more damage that way. Of course, we're running Cold Imbuement, and we are upgrading it to Mixed Cold Imbuement. Now, this is arguably one of the best imbuement upgrades you can take, because this is just going to give Cold Imbue more damage to crowd controlled enemies and double that to frozen enemies. So we get 40% times to frozen enemies, and then you pair that up with Frigid Finesse, we get 100% times increased damage to frozen enemies, and we're able to freeze enemies all the time. That's why we do have another 3 points into Frigid Finesse. This is arguably one of the best passives the rogue has. We are maxing out Precision Imbuement. This is going to give our imbuments more critical strike chance. We're going to put 1 point into Shadowcross only to get the Consuming Shadows, and we want to put 2 points into Consuming Shadows. Now, the reason why we have Consuming Shadows here is because it works with Barber. Barber scales off shadow damage, for anyone that does not know. So every time we're killing enemies with Barber, it is proccing Consuming Shadows, and we're able to fill our energy pretty much instantly every time those explosions go off. This is very, very strong now with Barber, and it's also a must-have for penetrating shots since it's the most expensive resource spender the rogue has. Moving on down to the ultimate section, obviously not taking any ultimates, but we are putting 1 point into Adrenaline Rush, and we're maxing out Haste, which is going to give us more movement speed when we're above 50% energy, more attack speed when we're below 50% energy. Now, for the key passive, I think it's an absolute no-brainer here because we are using 2 marksman skills. Then we're going to be wanting to take Precision. Now, this is really good with Barber now because we're going to be able to get more critical strike damage. And then when we do use Penetrating Shot, when we have max stacks of Precision, ooh, she hits hard. She hits real hard. The max hit I've seen with this build has been about 30-40 mil, which in the long run isn't really that much, but for Penetrating Shot, that's pretty decent. I'd also like to make a few notes as well. So you probably could also take away Poison Imbuement completely and run Caltrops. Caltrops is a good option. This did recently get buffed, and the enemies now take 5% more damage from Caltrop. Before it was 3, so you're able to get more damage the longer the enemies are in Caltrops. I mean, you don't want the enemies to be around for too long, but this is a little bit better that we're able to get more damage initially the longer the enemies are actually in Caltrop. And Caltrops is good because we're able to take Methodical Track Caltrop, and this just gives us more chill procs out on the enemy, which then means we can get the enemies frozen faster, and then we can start doing more damage to them that way. And then another thing you can do as well is just take away Poison Imbuement again and take Poison Trap. Poison Trap is another fantastic option. It is just a little slow for my kind of playstyle because you've got to put the Poison Trap down, you got to wait for the enemy to come over to actually hit it, but it's definitely the safer option. And then you can take Counter and Poison Trap, which is you can have a chance to reset your imbuements, and then you get cold imbuement back, and you can just start peppering the enemies with more chill imbue. There's actually a lot of ways you can kind of play this build. This is just the way I like to play with it, but feel free to try out Poison Trap, and also feel free to try out Caltrop, both very good options. Now for specializations, we are using combo points just to give us more damage. When it comes to bosses, Inner Sight is a little bit better. It's still very slow to get the Inner Sight proc because of how, you know, slow penetrating shot is and how hungry it is for energy. So I feel like sometimes combo points is maybe just a little bit better because we're able to just get more initial damage out on target, therefore Barber hits for more. But when you do get Inner Sight, you just spam penetrating shot and then you're able to get bigger damage that way. It's really up to you guys. Play around with whatever you want, but combo point, it seems to be better for damage. Inner Sight still does seem to be better for bosses slightly. Now moving on over to the gear and stats, guys. So for the helm, I am taking Shared Misery. Now this is the first thing I do want to kind of make a note about. Now I've just taken Shared Misery because it fits my play style, but if you want more of a defensive option, take the Enshrouding aspect. I will pop that up on screen for you guys now. That's the one when you stand still, you gain a free Dark Shroud, and your Dark Shrouds now do 4% extra, give you 4% extra damage reduction. A more defensive option, but I just like Shared Misery. We have pretty decent lucky hit chance, especially using Penetrating Shot at 3 combo points. So I feel like as soon as we have one enemy dazed or frozen, we hit him with Penetrating Shot, it just... Shared Misery just spreads it everywhere. And I did notice I was getting a lot more Shared Misery procs now that I was using Penetrating Shot. On our chest plate, we are still running Might. Might's going to be really good just to give us that 20% damage reduction. On our gloves, we are running Frostbitten Aspect, arguably one of the best aspects Rogue has at its disposal. Being able to freeze enemies with your grenades is so freaking OP, and it's so satisfying. I absolutely love the Frostbitten Aspect. You guys know I've done plenty of builds with Frostbitten Aspect. And then the other juicy thing it gives us is a nice 24% increase critical strike damage to frozen enemies. Now we are running Disobedience on our legs, but I probably would like to suggest to maybe put that on the necklace and then take the Umbrius off the necklace and pop that on your legs, because we are using 2 marksman skills. You're able to get Dark Shroud out pretty consistently, even with a 60% instead of like a 84 or a 90%. So I have got Disobedience here on my legs, and I have got Umbrius on necklace, but feel free to switch that around. So then Disobedience is kind of like what it was before it got nerfed, and then Umbrius is still going to work on your legs being at 60%. Boots, we are running Penitent Greaves. I was kind of deciding whether to take this away and just throw another like utility aspect on like just a pair of boots, but Penitent Greaves is still really good just to get extra chill out on the enemies. And like I said, because we are using Shared Misery and Penetrating Shot has such a high lucky hit chance at 3 combo points, so if one enemy gets chilled, we can spread that to the rest of the pack pretty consistently. And plus, the movement speed is just too good not to have. Bow, we are taking the Accelerating aspect, giving us a nice 50% increase attack speed when we critically strike with core skills. Already kind of went over the Umbrius aspect. Now we do have the Expectant still on our ring. This is just going to give our core skill more damage when we use a basic skill. And for the next ring, we are taking the Trick Shot aspect. This is a must for any Penetrating Shot build. This is just going to give you a hell of a lot more AoE than you would if you didn't have this. So whenever we hit one enemy, it's going to shoot 2 arrows out the side, dealing 23% of that base damage. That doesn't really matter. We just want extra arrows to go out the side, because if they crit on the enemies on the side, then Barber will start ticking and then they will just explode and die anyway. Now we are still running Edge Master. Edge Master is going to give us a flat out damage increase based on how full our resource is. Because we're using Barber, we're able to have pretty much full resource majority of the time. And for our last weapon, we are taking the unique dagger, the Condemnation. This again is another must have for this build, I feel, just because we don't have to use basic skill as much to generate 3 combo points. And then our core skill now does 38% times more damage when we spend 3 combo points. Now moving on over to the hearts, guys, nothing has changed too much from my previous build. We are still running Barber. The only thing I'd like to mention on Barber is because Vulnerable only lasts for 3 seconds. Make sure that your Barber is under 3 seconds. Otherwise, you're just not going to get as much damage out of it. I am still running Revenge. You can use the decoy one. It works really well because we are keeping our distance now. But I am still running Revenge. Just getting that 19% flat out damage reduction is kind of huge. And then because we are using the Frostbitten aspect, I think it's a no-brainer that we are still using the Munitions Heart. Again, Penetrating Shot has a great lucky hit chance. Now moving on over to the Paragon board, guys, remember that the max role build planner is in the description below. I'm only going to be covering the glyphs as I go through the Paragon board, just to save me and you guys a hell of a lot of time. And that's pretty much the only thing you guys probably would care about, is what glyphs I'm actually taking, because the general route to get to those glyphs is probably going to be the same for most Paragon boards. So my first glyph is the control glyph. This is just going to give us a flat out damage increase to crowd controlled enemies. The bonus is really good that we are able to do 10% increased damage to slowed and chilled enemies, and also 20% increased damage to stunned and frozen enemies. So yeah, we're taking a lot of extra damage to frozen enemies. Now the next glyph we are taking is the ranger glyph. This is just going to give us a flat out damage increase to marksman abilities, and the bonus is when we're wielding a ranged weapon we get 10% damage reduction. Next glyph is the combat glyph. This is going to give us a flat out critical strike damage increase. This bonus doesn't really matter now that we are using Barber, and Barber is able to give our energy back anyway, but obviously the critical strike damage increase is friggin' huge. Now next glyph I am using the canny glyph because I am using poison, and because Barber is shadow damage, it's non-physical damage. That is why I'm using the canny glyph. And because we are using poison, when we do hit an enemy with poison, the bonus for this glyph I think will start working. Non-physical damage increases all the non-physical damage an enemy takes from you by 1% up to 10%. So I'm assuming that when we poison an enemy, that means they're going to start taking more non-physical damage. So when Barber eventually does explode and hit them, they should take a little bit more damage. That's how I think I'm interpreting this. So if I'm wrong, please let me know, but that is why we are taking the canny glyph, to give our poison more damage and also to make Barber's shadow damage hit harder. And then for the last glyph we are taking the exploit glyph. This is going to give us more vulnerable damage, one of the best multipliers inside of Diablo 4. Then the bonus is a must have for marksman builds. This is whenever we damage an enemy for the first time, it makes them vulnerable for 3 seconds. This cannot happen more than every 20 seconds. You walk into a room, you use penetrating shot, it hits all the enemies, they're all vulnerable now, and then that means that Barber will then do more damage, your poison's going to do more damage. It just overall makes the build feel a lot better than when you don't take the exploit glyph. That is basically it, guys. I had a lot of fun making this build. I'm keen to see you guys try it out and see what you guys actually think, because penetrating shot surprised the hell out of me when I just wanted to try something other than twisting blades for one, and I hadn't really seen too many people make a penetrating shot build on YouTube, so might as well add to that catalog, you know what I'm saying? Appreciate all the love and support as always, guys, and until next time, stay safe, peace out.